This next panel is physicians.
Did I get the audio?
So, here's the thing, everybody. We have done an incredible job turning Hempfest from a civil protest where hundreds of us would get arrested every weekend, van loads of policemen out there arresting us and putting us in the paddy wagon for our civil protest to be able to have the freedom to imbibe in this herb. 20 years later, we've got it won. First within the city and then within the state of Washington. And we have that freedom. The problem is, some people are taking that freedom and blowing it in others' face. You know, if we're not responsible in our adult usage of cannabis, we're going to set our victory backwards. We're going to have a backlash that we're just not going to control. Those of us that have been in the movement more than 40 years know that this happened in the 70s. We just about had our one. We really thought we were going to have marijuana legal in 1976. Some of us still think we did, you know, but certain events happened. I don't want to go into details. Read High in America if you want to understand it. And see how our national leaders set us back 40 years. And we're just getting back to the momentum we had in the 70s. And the answer is, let's not blow it. Let's be responsible. So we've got this panel here to talk about this. Cyril Bohanna is a steering member of Seattle Hempfest. He's been responsible. If any of you got to the huge party we had here on Friday night, thank the VIPs and all that area, and the speakers. We got Mikki Norris, Mikki and her husband Chris Conrad, who may take over as moderator for me because I've been going for hours. The two of them were like activists when I started to get involved in 1991. And, they were so perceptive. There was no hemp industry, but the two of them decided to form a business alliance for commerce and hemp. They had their family values. Family? Yeah, they understood how we were going to have to get organized to succeed 25 years ago. And, for that alone, Mikki and Chris received our highest honor here at Hempfest this year. And well deserving it. Allison Drayson is Edeluz, incredible edibles. Yes. And Lisa Taylor, and who I don't know. What is your qualification here? Lisa, go ahead. Sorry, I don't have your bio.
Oh, that's okay. I'm the owner of Wicked the West, and I'm a hemp. You're familiar with hemp wicks? Takes the butane out of your smoking experience.
Right on. Wicked hemp. All right, I love it. All right, so Chris, you want to be the moderator?
There he is, finally.
You get your breath. I'm just going to get these guys started.
About time you showed up, Chris.
Cyril, tell us about what we're doing here at Hempfest to get responsible adult usage understood.
So I wanna call out the fact that this also happens to be the theme concept here for the Hempfest this year. I've been working with Vivian on the board of directors and John on obtaining our permit to have this event every year. And the concept of place, time, and manner is a legal concept that applies to us to have this every year. It's the concept that the American courts are using to set possible restrictions to free speech. We all have a constitutionally protected right here of addressing our government for redress of grievance, and we're allowed to say whatever we want, but the court can place certain restriction in terms of time and place and manner that you can maybe disturb, or you can't have an event, for example, that is in a place that's unsafe. So for safety reason, we can say, hey, you can go and move and talk here instead of here, because in the middle of the way you can have something that's dangerous in terms of fire, etc. We've been grappling with that for years and trying to have this big event here and working with the whole time, place and manner restrictions that can be imposed on us. And we thought that it was an excellent parallel to the new world of legal consumption. There is a limitation that the laws that we're enacting and the society that surrounds us, whether they follow the law or not, understand our limitations to when and how we can consume cannabis. And so, for example, linking the two, our permit around free speech and the consumption of cannabis, the city was concerned with the underage smoking at Hempfest. There's this image, I don't know why, of a lot of underage kids smoking at Hempfest. And so we created for the first time those adult lounges that are there, that are kind of our attempt here at Hempfest to kind of like create a precedent and a new system. Here's what could be, you go to other festivals or other public events and you have a beer garden. Well, here's how you could smoke out of public view, because currently you're supposed to smoke out of public view at a public event. So this is what we've been trying to do here at Hempfest. We're participating, like all of you, in defining here what the law should be, what the social stigmas should be. There's clearly a double standard. Personally, my view, so something here to say, I'm an event director for Seattle Hempfest, but I'll express my views. You've probably heard about, John Davis speaks and expresses his views, so, we're trying to make the difference here. Personally, I happen to have kids. My son is in there in the public. He sees me smoking just like he sees me drinking at parties. He goes to parties where a lot of people drink, maybe too much, and they don't have any problem drinking in front of him and in front of other kids, having fun somewhere else and doing something else. A lot of people take a break and smoke a cigarette just outside of the door of all of our parties, and no kids have any problem with that. They're not trying to steal our cigarettes. Maybe the older ones try to have a drink every now and then, but you know how that works. So why is it that we should go and hide to smoke out of public view? Is it really a necessity, and is it really something we should fight for, or is it a responsibility issue? I think it's an interesting topic to discuss. I think I wanted us to have that conversation here. Be happy to hear your thoughts.
Okay,
Mikki
well,
looks like she doesn't agree.
Next is Mikki Norris. She's my wife, by way of disclaimer. But in any case, I think what we've got here talking about what's happening, Cyril, is that we've got a situation where by legalizing cannabis, it puts into a situation where it's treated more like other things. And so it's like last night we went to an event which was connected to this, and it had a non-smoking. So even though cannabis is legal, we still couldn't smoke it because of the non-smoking rules and so forth. And Mikki's been working on the Cannabis Consumers Campaign for a long time, talking about responsible use and how to use cannabis in a way that's not going to get people railing against us and so forth. And so, Mikki, why don't you talk a little bit about the Cannabis Consumers Campaign and what you've already done in that regard?
Okay. Thanks, Chris. So I'm the director of the Cannabis Consumers Campaign, which is basically a website that offers people a forum to come out of the closet. It's at cannabisconsumers.org, and the idea is if we come out of the closet by filling out, at my website you fill out a survey, send me a photo, and I have hundreds of people up there to show a different image of who cannabis consumers are. The idea of the campaign is to show that people can have a good relationship with cannabis. We are cannabis consumers, and we're good, contributing members of society. We're successful people. We're, in fact, I consider us the good people, and we should not be subjected to this kind of discrimination that we've been subjected to all this time, even now, because we're not done yet. We still have drug testing. That's a tool of discrimination. We still have bad DUI laws that do not know how to deal with drivers under the influence, because most cannabis consumers, especially experienced ones with lots of cannabis in their systems, have no problem driving. It's more like the novice that has a problem because they're not sure, they're not used to the feelings, they're not sure how to deal with it. But we're trying to fight this stigma by coming out of the closet, and I urge you all to do that, because I believe that's really going to ultimately change it for the better. When people see who you are, see that your lives are going in the direction you want them to be going in, you shouldn't be a problem. So I think responsible use really has to do with creating a good relationship, a positive relationship with cannabis, and your use should reflect that make sure you're fulfilling your responsibilities and obligations to yourself and your family and your jobs and your lives. And if you're having the life you want, great with it. If you're not having the life you want, you might want to look and see if cannabis is contributing in any way to not living up to what you want. So you need to take an assessment, and I always say, don't blame the pot. We're always blaming the pot, for people are blaming, it's because of the pot that they did that, or because of the pot they did that. But for taking personal responsibility, we can't blame the pot. We have to make that assessment of our lives and make sure that it's enhancing our lives and not impeding it, because some people do have problems with it like they have with anything else. And especially young people, the young people out there, good idea to wait until you're at least, I'd like to say 18 would be a nice age to wait until, because your brains are still developing, and we want to make sure it's developing, fully without any extra stuff in there. And even though if you have a medicinal use, that's a different situation. But we have to look at our set and setting. That's what responsible use comes down to, set and setting, how you're using it, when you're using it. For example, if you're using cannabis, has a tendency to make you non-linear in your thinking, so that you can be kind of distracted. And for me, sometimes when I'm reading, it's difficult to read. I'd rather be outside looking at the trees and taking a walk in nature or something. But if you have problems with that, it's a good idea not to smoke before you go to school, not to smoke before your classes, so you can have your full attention on that, and especially if you don't need it medically. If you need it medically, I know people who need it medically to function, to be able to get out of bed and live their lives and perform their jobs. But if not, look at the set and setting, make sure it's appropriate where you're doing it, and that you can get home safely as well as a result. But to fight the stigma, we're going to have to be role models. If you're coming out of the closet, if your life is a real mess, then you don't have to come out of the closet. You're excused. But if your life is really good and you're successful, then come out of the closet and let people know that this is who you are, and this is part of our lives, and it's good. And one thing I like to, I guess you'll be asking questions, so I'm going to kind of wrap this up, because I know other people have things to say. There's forms of ingestion. You'll probably talk about edibles, or
I'm talking about all cannabis safety.
Okay, so I'm sure you'll cover it. If you don't, I'll come back to it. If you're going to take dabs, one important thing, sit down when you're doing it, please. Because, this is a really highly concentrated form of it. And we've seen people keel over. And we've seen people keel over from drinking alcohol as well, and consuming a lot of cannabis. So consider one or the other, because sometimes it's too much, and like I said, I've seen people pass out because the cannabis can be very strong these days. So sit down at least, so you have less place to fall over if you're going to fall over. And one other thing I like to advise people to do, this is one of my favorite things. I've taught a lot of people how to do this, but I don't have a joint to show you. I like to One thing I like to teach people is to smoke chillum style, and that's to prevent the spread of germs. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't like it when somebody really lips a joint. Fish lips a joint and passes it on to you. It's kind of gross to me, but so we always smoke as much as possible. Okay, I'll show you with the pen. So pretend this is a big joint. This is a nice oily joint. It looks good. Okay. So what you want to do is put it in between your fingers just like that, and just make a little fist. Hold it tightly to seal off where the air is coming in, and then just smoke it off. You're smoking off of your hand. I guess I can do it with it lit, but one of my responses.
No torches were allowed this year.
One of the things I usually don't smoke before I talk. That's one of my appropriate things, just because I need to be linear. So I'll show you with that. Okay, one hit. That's not. And it's real nice because after I'm done, I can pass this naked smoke it this way, and then their lips are just on their hands. And it also creates a little bit more space, so you're taking more air. So try it next time you're smoking a joint. And it can work with a pipe too, but not as easy. With pipes, you can just kind of make a circle and smoke off your hands. Or bring, little alcohol swab or something, or don't worry about it. But I like to, especially during cold season. You don't mind?
It's hard to light when you hold it chill style.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
She's out.
All right, thank you, Mikki. Not only for illustrating that, but illustrating peer pressure at work.
I said I want to be linear when I talk, so when I'm done, then she can pass it.
Our next speaker is Allison Tracy.
Thank you for the donation for the exhibition here.
You can bring it back. You can bring it back when we're done.
Okay, so
We're going to recommend.
Right, we'll need to practice now.
So she's going to take it to somewhere we're allowed to smoke.
You could give that back to the person who nicely donated this.
Yeah, that's the other etiquette. You give it back to the person who lit the joint and got it out. Allison Grace is going to be speaking next. Now, I think. Mikki was talking about some different aspects of safety.
I'm actually going to be talking about cannabis safety.
Exactly. So just by background, the situation on cannabis has really changed a lot over the years. When we were first smoking, it was like Mexican marijuana, like 3%. Then in the 80s, along came, yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
The 80s came along skunk, and a bunch of my friends actually stopped smoking because it was too strong and it was too expensive. And nowadays, people got used to that, and nowadays people are doing the dabbing.
Dabs. I'm going to talk a little bit about that.
Because of that.
I'm going to talk a little bit about that.
I'll bring it up to you. Go ahead and talk to us a little bit about the changes and some safety tips for the different
So
stages.
I'm Allison Drazen. I'm the owner of Edeluz Edibles, and I'm also a member of the Marijuana Mavens. And we are doing educational cannabis videos to educate mainstream America about cannabis. Everything from the basics of what a sativa and an indica is, to how to start eating edibles small, and learning that smoking a joint is very different from eating an edible. Smoking a joint is like, it's a 3-hour commitment, but eating an edible is more like an 8-hour commitment. So I also want to talk a little bit about dabbing and that stuff too. But so in doing my research, I came upon Ethan Russo's article about antidotes for THC, and this is a message that I really would like to share, and I want you guys to take this home with you, because I've been smoking weed for 30 years and I never knew that there was a way to mitigate the effects of THC. So for people who may get too high, or if someone in Kansas decides to try a dab for the first time and they get too high, some things that Ethan Russo found were that some drinking citrus drinks helps to mitigate the effects of the Delta-9 THC. Pistachio nuts and pinene are also mitigating factors for THC, and probably the biggest one is a high CBD product, whether it be an oil or an edible or something, or tincture. I'm a a judge for High Times, and I keep a bottle of high CBD tinctures in my judge's kit so that in between entries I can level out my high so that I can have a clean fresh start, for the next entry. So high CBDs, citrus drinks, pistachios, and pine nuts are all really good for if you see someone who's in distress. Pass along some of those words of wisdom so that we don't have too many people ending up in the emergency room. That's one of my biggest concerns is as legalization moves forward across our country, people need to be educated so that we don't have our emergency rooms flooded with non-life-threatening THC overdoses, because no one has ever died from eating too much cannabis or smoking too much weed. And so those antidotes are something that I definitely want you guys to go out and share. So one of the other things that I'm really concerned about, I'm a part of the extract artist community, and there have been a lot of explosions the past 6 months, and they're starting to get the notice of the government. High concentrates are very helpful for medical marijuana patients who need that medicine. We need to keep concentrates. So those of us in the extract community, we really want regulations. We want regulations for closed loop systems, and we want intrinsic safe rooms for proper ventilation so that we can keep having concentrates on our shelves. Open blast, I say please stop. Open blasting is so easy. You can easily go and get a PVC pipe, grab some cans of butane and blast it, but people are dying. And we can't have people dying and people also needing to get their medicine. So if you want to keep dabbing, stop open blasting. It's kind of my message. And I want to also touch upon the dab safety that you were talking about. One of the things that they have signs up at High Times for people who dab. Dabbing, don't give someone who's never dabbed, don't just give them a sly virgin dab. It is not cool. Dabbing is something that needs to be done where you're seated, where you have water. I have a family member that was in town that doesn't dab very much, and he came in and I gave him a dab. And he was like, oh, let's try what else? And I said, why don't we wait 10 minutes and we see how you feel? 10 minutes later, he was like, I'm totally fine. You don't think just because, it takes some time to hit your system, but dabs are very concentrated and very strong. I've seen too many people, we call them DTFO'd, and you might find that on a hashtag on Instagram. People who dab too much and have passed out, it's really not very pretty. And it's as we're moving forward on legalization, we want people to have the awareness and the education that they don't need to do that. So again, I'd go back to those antidotes for THC for people who are too uncomfortably high. So, thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I'm going to pass it on to Lisa.
All right, and what she was talking about the dabbing, I'm working with an expert witness in the course in California, and believe me, a jury looks very differently at somebody who's gotten caught with a few marijuana plants in the backyard and somebody who blew up the garage and caught the neighbor's house on fire. It's
akin to a meth lab in California. So in California, you can't make it, or you really are in trouble. We still have it here.
All right, now here's somebody who takes charge of her own images. You can see with the pointed hat. This is Lisa Taylor, and throughout history, the image of the cannabis user has actually been dictated towards us. Like Harry Anslinger created the axe-wielding maniac marijuana smoker, which then showed up in Reefer Madness, and then of course the hippies and the bomb-throwing anarchists, which was the image in the later 60s, and then they came up with the stoner who can't do anything under Reagan and so forth. And it wasn't until the 90s that the cannabis community actually took charge with the medical marijuana patient and the grower who's actually doing something good for community and the business person and so forth. And so, as the image has changed over time, that's also affected things. And so I was hoping Lisa would talk to us a little bit about that and introduce herself to the group and about what is the image issue that we have to deal with today for cannabis consumers, and what's your main interest in this subject?
I'm Lisa, I'm the owner of Wicked Wick of the West. I make a hemp wick, and I will talk to you guys about that. You just getting the hat thing? It's all right, we're all a little stoned here. Any excuse I get to wear a witch hat, you have to understand. I will talk a little bit about that. It's nice to see that the image, we're trying to change the image at least of what's going on. We're not just all thugs and druggies, and we're actually strong people that have brains and intellect and own businesses. And with Allison, I'm in a group called the Women of Weed, which has just really shown me that. When I first got invited to that first get-together, I thought I was going to be one of the oldest people there, and turned out to be that I was one of the youngest. And walk into a room and seeing, women that are attorneys in their suit dresses taking dabs, I didn't even know what the hell a dab was. So, times are changing for sure, and we are trying to change the image. We recently met with some people from National Geographic magazine and the Women of Weed, and she took a photograph of all of us, and she didn't want any tie-dyes, she didn't want any peace signs, she didn't want, anything that was going to have that old message. We're trying to create a new message. We can be stoners and still be strong and still be successful. So, which I'm noticing here around Hempfest. I've been coming for 10 years now, and boy, is the population changing. I mean, it used to just be 25 and under, but I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing that at all. And you can go to Liberty Garden, where it's 21 and up, if you want to get a more adult feel, and that's right over behind there, where I'll be working the booth with Washington Bud Company. But as far as health goes, I want to talk about hemp wicks. Does anybody know what a hemp wick is in the room? Awesome. So it's an industrial hemp twine that I use, and I dip it in beeswax. And so it just creates this kind of, actually have it here with my thing, it creates a coating. You could wrap it around your lighter and just light that like it's a match, essentially. You spend a lot of money on your bud. I know you pride yourself on the taste and the flavor, and then you just sit there and contaminate it. In that moment, you take that bong hit or you hit that pipe with butane, and it afflicts the flavor. I mean, try a hemp wick, you won't believe it. It's hard for me. Sometimes if I'm in an environment and I don't have a wick, somebody hands me a lighter and a pipe, I just have to pass. And the safety and health reasons for that is when you are taking a hit, that butane is trapped, the vapors in the pipe, in the bong, right straight through the joint, so it's getting into your lungs. I don't know how many times a day you guys hit the pipe or bong, but think about how many hits of butane that you're putting into your body. Going to realize it's probably a lot more than you thought. We've had a lot of testimonies of people learning how to just make the most of their wick. If you have arthritis or carpal tunnel syndrome, you can just light a candle in your room and you never have to pick up that lighter again and make that motion. And so that's really helpful for people that have those medical conditions. Also, I've gotten testimonies of people who just said, I always had headaches that I didn't know why, and I started using this wick, and now those headaches are gone. You too? Okay, great. And also, chronic cough. I used to have a chronic cough. I don't know why I had a chronic cough. Wake up just hacking every morning, and I started making wicks in about... That guy needs a wick stat. I mean, stat. Anyway, the last thing was the chronic cough thing that I had when I started using a wick about 6 months later. My roommate said, you know what? You don't wake up in the morning with that weird cough anymore. And it was totally attributed to the butane use. So I encourage you to buy a hemp wick. I'm at wickedwickofthewest.com. But another cool thing I wanted to mention really quick is you guys know that hemp twine dipped in beeswax was found in King Tut's tomb. I mean, this is an ancient thing. It's a really natural thing. You should be smoking your hemp with hemp. I also want you to get involved in helping us get industrial hemp back into our state. There's no reason why I have to resource Australia, Romania, or not Australia, but Austria, Romania, Canada. I mean, it's just crazy. I have to hope that I get the same thing that I got last time so my product remains consistent. Washington Hemp HIA is what it's called, is the Washington chapter. And you can find them at www.joinhemp.org. So also, one other thing, I don't know if you guys know this, burning beeswax also is the same ray as the sun. And so it gives you that ray, it stimulates your pituitary gland, So every time you pull that up to your eyes, you're making yourself healthier just by burning beeswax. In Europe, they actually, in the x-ray rooms, they have beeswax altars, because burning beeswax sends out negative ions into the air, counteracting positive ions, and like radiation and things like that give off positive ions. So in the hospitals, they have these pillars where they just have beeswax burning to help do that. So there's a lot of really positive and healthy reasons to use the wick, and forget the butane, stuff's bunk. Thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you. We have about 15 minutes left, so if people have some questions, I'll take them. But I wanted to raise one myself. One of the safety tips I always give people is do not smoke in your car. The reason is because if a cop pulls you over and he smells smoke in your car, you are going to have serious problems. Oftentimes it ends up with the whole car being searched, and the 5 pounds you have in the back is going to show up during that search. So, yeah, anyway, so we haven't really talked too much about the whole smoking and driving thing, and it's really a complicated subject, actually, because some people drive better when they get high, some people drive worse. There's no real test that tell it's for impairment or anything like that. So I wanted to get a little take from the different panels about what they think about that, and I wanted to hear a little from Cyril about having a child and how that works for you. And then people have questions. Why don't you move your way to the front so I can you can ask your question to the panel as well. First, though, why don't we talk about this? What about, how can a person tell if it's okay for them to drive versus whether they should be like hanging back for a while, because it seems to vary from person to person.
Are you asking me? Are you asking?
I'm asking anybody on the panel.
I think that if you should know your limit, and the same way you know your limits with alcohol, you should figure out what your limit is with cannabis and don't drive. I mean, there are times when I may have waited an hour or two and I feel like I'm okay to drive, but what makes me feel okay to drive is going to be very different from what makes her feel like level it's okay to drive, or her. So I think it's a very individual thing that you need to figure out before you get behind the wheel of a car. And there's Uber.
I'd say it's a good idea to wait 15 minutes before you drive if you can. The thing is, now I forgot. See, I smoked and I shouldn't have.
Good weed.
It was. Okay. All right. Yeah. Wait. The good news about cannabis, I got it back. The good news about cannabis is that you know when what kind of state you're in. I have handed the keys over many times when I felt like I was too impaired to drive, and the times that I didn't, I knew I was okay. I was good to go. But as I said before, for novice drivers, really, you might not want to, and especially if you've had an edible, don't take an edible and then, think that you're okay and you're driving like an hour later and all of a sudden you're coming on, or 2 hours later. For me, often edibles are 2 hours. It takes 2 hours later if I've eaten already. So that's one thing to do.
All right.
I think the main issue is drowsiness, and so it's the same thing as with a lot of other medication, and it's the same thing with getting tired. You're coming back from a party or from pretty much any place, and it's 3 a.m., and are you really awake enough to look in front of you? And so I think it's the same thing with smoking, especially if you took some CBD, indica strains, etc. Is, are you awake enough to react to what's happening in front of you? I think that in general, when you smoke, you tend to go slower, so you reduce that part of the risk, but you just can't fall asleep on the wheel, and that's the main thing.
And Dale Geringer, actually, he suggests that you know what the police impairment test is, and if you could do all the different things, 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 1, 2, 3, etc. Stand on one foot. If you can't stand on one foot without falling over, probably not good to drive. What's your question?
My question is for Allison. You named a bunch of ways to counteract THC, but I didn't hear you mention citicoline at all. And
I'm not familiar with citicoline. Can you explain to me about citicoline? Actually, I've heard remnants of it this weekend. So.
Okay, citicoline works really well. I'm involved in a bunch of cannabis medical groups on Facebook, administrator of a bunch, have a radio program and all that. But what the cancer patients that are members of, all patients that are members of, for instance, Cannabis Oil Success Stories, they've been finding that with people who are thrown off by the psychoactivity, and using it in a suppository or using citicoline at the same time has worked really well. People who have been, well, my dad couldn't do it at all, are now being able to treat their parents with that. When you didn't mention, I was like, oh no, she's...
Where do you find citicoline?
Yeah, where do you find it?
Vitamin aisle.
Is it a pill? Is it a synthetic? Is it in food?
It is a synthetic, I believe. But
So it's a synthetic drug that you would take to counteract a natural drug?
I believe they made it for
Okay, it's a vitamin. Cool.
Okay, so check that one out.
I will
That's
totally
really
check into
good
that.
question. That's not really a question, so I'll go to the next question.
Thank you. Thank you all for what you're doing. This is amazing. And a big believer in the wick. And like, for example, one day I was, and this is a safety precaution for everyone, for my 2 cents here, is on a windy day, you're trying to light a bong with a lighter. Oh my goodness, I couldn't get the thing lit. I kept sucking and sucking and sucking. And what was I doing? I was sucking in pure butane that wasn't even combusting.
Yeah.
Right? You're talking about the dangers of inhaling when it is combusting. I wasn't even combusting. It was terrible, and I got this massive headache. So anyway, warning, do not try to light your bong in the wind. Just don't do it. It's really dangerous. So now here's a fascinating thing. You're giving us all these amazing safety tips. I would say this audience, with the exception of the good young man over here, is probably 99 percentile in knowledge about cannabis, THC, and the impacts and safety and all that. I mean, isn't that a fair statement? Right? And we're getting valuable information from this. My point is, what about the first-time user? We're opening up all these dispensaries and saying, hey, as long as you're 21 or older, you're good. Oh, all right, great. And they come in and buy an edible and eat it. 15 minutes later, I'm not feeling anything. I mean, like nothing. I don't know, it must be really macho. I got really good tolerance. Oh, yeah, I can take it. And so they eat another brownie. Half an hour later, they're still not feeling anything, right? This is the norm, even when you tell people. I don't know if you've had that experience. You tell them, and then they end up having the same experience because they have... Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox. My point is, we need to have a standard, right? I've actually been working on this concept, having a standard for a basic minimum level of education for consumers.
Yeah.
Don't just let them walk into a dispensary and buy what they want and go home and go out in the parking lot or whatever. And after 45 minutes, they're still not feeling anything after 4 brownies. Well, I'm going to go drive to a movie after all. And they're barreling down I-5. My own dad took the tiniest amount of concentrate in a capsule, right? And I told him, Dad, do not touch this stuff, right? Because he's got prostate cancer. I said, do not touch this stuff. Wait till you get to angiophiles, and you don't have to drive or do anything, and then you can start the treatment. He thought, well, it's so tiny, I'm just going to try it and see. Well, he ended up passed out in his car. He was about to drive somewhere, for crying out loud, right? A lot of these people who are given these... Anyway, we need a basic minimum education. So anyway, if anyone's interested, come talk with me because we're in the process of developing that standard, but it needs to be all of us contributing to it because I've got this much knowledge, which is what I'm finding out right now. It's a community thing. Together we've got the knowledge, right? We need to come together, share this knowledge. Anyway, come talk with me and I'll be delighted to share with you. Thank you.
I'm not sure if that was a question either. Maybe this is a question.
Well, there is. I mean, he brought up some really good points about how we need to have public education about the first-time use of it, and also we need good labeling on things. The edibles. I can't tell you how many times I like edibles for sleeping. It helps me with my insomnia at night. That's when I use it because during the day it's too much for me. But at night, I have the hardest time figuring out how much I'm supposed to take, right, from it. And I think they're starting to figure that out in Colorado. I think they're going towards a 1 dose, like considering it 10 milligrams of THC is a single dose. And right now they sell things at 120 grams. So if you think that you're not doing like 12 doses, you're doing 12 doses, and that's why you're, freaking out or something else and having a bad experience with it. And I've had lots of times when I felt like, oh, I had too much. And now when you've had an edible, there's not much you can do about it except wait it out or try some of the citrus drinks or go to sleep or do something very calming or go out in nature to help you feel better about that. But we need that labeling, and I think that's going to come with the regulated market. And then you'll know what is reasonable, and really, even if 10 milligrams is considered a dose, you might want to start with 5, because everybody's different, or 2. Is it 2? Or 1. I mean, you need to start small, because really it changes. When you're taking an edible, it's different. It goes through your liver and it metabolizes differently, and the effect is a lot more powerful.
It also depends on if it's made with butter, oil, or hash oil, because it goes through your system faster if you're ingesting like a vegetable oil and olive oil rather than a butter, because the butter takes longer to digest.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. I feel so grateful to you, and the words knowledge is power and empowering is coming back to me, because I have been particularly worried about me driving when I'm stoned, because I drive better. So, but you know, that's contrary to what I've heard so much. That's contrary. I was just saying that I drive at the speed limit, and what I've noticed is I am the only one driving at the maximum speed limit. And then everyone else is speeding, and apparently the cops stop people who drive slowly, as you were saying also. So anyway, my only point is thank you so much for doing this. So just be aware, I guess you should be speeding, not driving. No, I'm kidding. And the second point is on the kids, thank you so much for sharing that. Kudos to you, kid. And one thing I guess I haven't heard too much of, and as a teacher and as somebody who's new to the cannabis industry and still trying to figure out what to do, good judgment. I'm not hearing how important, I mean, you're saying it in more or less the same words, but good judgment and self-control is what it really comes down to, whether it's food, TV, whatever, right? So, I mean, thank you so much.
Actually, we're about out of time here. We're going to invite the panel to come over to the Knowledge Hut for people who have more questions. But before we go, I'd like to thank the panel and give them a big hand, number 1. And number 2, we have another safety tip here, which was just brought forward. I think it's worth at least hearing it. So take just a moment to let's hear this.
Hi there. How many people have heard of solar bowling?
Hell yes.
All right. Solar bowling is another alternative.